What's up, everybody? This is Jason Bell, and you are listening to the Cleats Off Podcast with my girl, Liz Bhandari.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Cleats Off Podcast. I'm your host, Liz Bhandari, and this is a show that brings you closer to the game you love. Today's guest is Jason Bell, former cornerback and safety in the NFL, having played for the Dallas Cowboys, the Houston Texans, and the New York Giants. Nowadays, Jason is a pundit on the BBC's The NFL Show and is co-host of the Jason Osi Podcast. In this episode, we discuss the reality of playing in the NFL, building resilience, defining career moments, and the mental impact of retirement. Jason also shared with me the players who influenced him and the toughest opponents he's faced. Enjoy the show. Welcome to the show, Jason. How are you?
I am well. Thank you for having me as a guest. I heard my good friend, my buddy, was on here.
He was indeed. So you've got competition.
You know what? I've learned never to go for a face-off with him in any competition because his level, it just rises, man. The dude is so competitive. So I'm just going to stay in my lane and try to make all the viewers not switch off.
You'll be
or
fine.
Listeners. My bad. Listeners. Yeah.
Well, listen, thank you so much for taking the time out to speak to me today. I'm really excited to hear about your story. So, let's get right into it.
All right.
Now, you played in high school, through to college, and then professionally in the NFL. How was that transition, and can anything really prepare you for the reality?
Wow. You know, every level of football had its own special thing. I would say in high school, you had such a close relationship and camaraderie with your teammates. I mean, you went to school with them. You spent all your time with them. And it wasn't like the NFL where you could get cut, from the team. I mean, you could, but it was really hard. If you went out there and you tried hard, you had a place on the team. So you had a bond with those guys, and that was really special. When I went to college, when I was in high school, obviously I wanted to go to college and did everything I could to get there. But when I went to college, it still had that level of camaraderie, except you lived with these guys, so I mean, these are lifelong friends now that I have because you grew up with them. And it was the same thing. You were going to be together 4 or 5 years, depending on how long you were at that university. So, there was competition. It was, you were friends with the guys you were competing with, but yet you spent a lot of time with them. And it truly was a kind of a family atmosphere and vibe to it because, you were with them all the time. And the pros is just different. The pros is just, it was a business. You do form relationships, lifelong friends. I mean, look at me and Osi, but it is a business and it's different because you go home to your family or whatever else you have going on. So it's a job, but you find a way. What's brilliant about the NFL, and I think pro sports in general, is you find a way to get on the same page and get that camaraderie and that understanding with teammates quickly because you have to. And that's what pros learn to do. So that was that was kind of my experience and the difference. One thing I will say is on each level, there's always little fast guys, but there's not a lot of fast big guys. And as I got to college, the big guys were faster. And then I got to the pros, and you got guys, I mean, Osi can run. He's a huge defensive end, and you got these big guys that can fly. And you're just like, wow, the field just gets so smaller because they're bigger and faster.
Yeah.
So that was one of the big differences also.
That's so fascinating to hear because I guess that's it in terms of how the game has changed over time. Like the players who you think would just generally stand still and like defend, they properly run.
Man, they can fly. They're getting faster and stronger. The field's not getting bigger, but the athletes are getting more explosive. So It's a lot going on between those white lines.
And I guess throughout your career, obviously, you faced a couple of injuries. How did you kind of, I guess, build up this like resilience, and what was it that motivated you?
I would say, the true love of the game. I mean, I truly love the game. I've always been a fan. I love to compete. And at some point, whether it was a part of my nature or I developed it, I wanted to basically overcome any obstacle to continue to play, to continue to be out there on the field. So anytime I had an injury, it was just one of those moments where I had to learn from it and take that and use that to become a better person and player in general.
Absolutely, yeah. And going through an injury is tough for any athlete, as you don't know how bad it is and you don't know how long recovery could take. Was there ever a time where you thought, I can't do this anymore, and almost quit?
Right. When I got hurt in college and I thought I would never play again, that was difficult. I hurt my heel, I had surgery, and I had to sit out a year. That was tough. And it wasn't because I thought I wouldn't put the work in. I just thought I might never heal again and play. Yeah. That was very difficult. And once I overcame that, and it took a while, it took a year, I think I knew I had the resiliency to kind of battle through any injury that I had after that, because that was hard. Yeah. I'd never been in that kind of situation where I truly missed a year and nobody could kind of give me a proper time period of when I would recover. I was only supposed to be out 8 weeks. So It was that lack of an understanding of the injury. If somebody would have said you hurt your knee or you did this and it was going to take 6 months and that's what you do and go out and rehab, I would have been able to do that. Yeah. But this was a situation where no one knew when I was going to be all right and healthy to get back there. And that was really tough. But that is why I think I played in the league so long and was able to go through the ups and downs of the NFL, because I faced it in college. Yeah. And I kind of was ready for that uphill battle on the field and off the field with whatever adversity was thrown my way.
Yeah, that's amazing. And in your career, so you played for the Cowboys, Texans, and the Giants. How would you say that each team, I guess, differed in the sense of like management style, even down to like the fans of each team?
Wow. So, I would say I was really lucky, because if you look at the three teams I played with, the Cowboys, the Texans, and the Giants, well, you have the Cowboys, America's team. Everybody knows about them throughout the world. They know about the Dallas Cowboys. So when I got there, I'm playing with Emmitt Smith, Darren Woodson, Larry Allen. These dudes, two of them are Hall of Famers. And Darren Woodson, I just watched everything he did and thought, if I could just be like him, I'll be successful on and off the field. So that was my introduction into the pros. So I learned how to be a pro really quick by watching those guys. Then I went to Houston, and this was a new team. It was the beginning of that franchise, the first year. So I watched the team kind of develop its own culture. You had players come from all different teams. So we had to kind of morph into what we were going to be in our identity. And with some, I'd say the top draft pick, which was Andre Johnson the next year, who was in their Hall of Fame, I think a guy like him and what he stood for was kind of what the identity became. And it was great to be a part of a team where your leaders were kind of really pushing you forward in the direction that franchise would become later on. Aaron Glenn, who's coaching right now for the New Orleans Saints, was a guy who was just a tremendous leader and a great guy to follow in the locker room. So being there was, being part of a new kind of culture, like if you went to work for a startup or something like that. Yeah. It was just all new. And then the Giants, I got plugged into just a storied franchise like the Cowboys, but I loved the culture. I loved the way they operated. You had the leaders like Strahan, Osi. You had one of my great friends, Antonio Pierce, the middle linebacker. You had a bunch of guys on offense. I'm only going to call out the defensive guys because we only got so much time. But, you had this culture, and I plugged right into it. Some of my best friends are from that team that I only played 2 years on. And it was great to plug into. I love the ownership. I love, there's a guy named Ronnie Barnes there who is the head of the medical staff. He's a head trainer. He's like a father to me. And it's I love the people in the organization. And so, we won when I was there, and then they won the Super Bowl the next year when I was on injured reserve. So it obviously worked out for them. They won another one later on OC. So it was just great to be a part of that. And it gave me different perspectives on how franchises are run, and a lot of it is what kind of players you have in that locker room. So I'm so thankful I was able to play for all three teams, and then all three teams in different phases in, the team's life.
Yeah, that's amazing. And when you look back at your days in the NFL, was there anyone in particular who played like a huge influence on your life?
Yeah, I think, so Darren Woodson at the Cowboys, big, because as a young man, I was able to see a great player be a great man. So I just had to watch him, and he would answer any question I had, but the way he just did things was the right way. So I knew if I just followed that manuscript, I would be fine throughout my career. Then when I went to Houston, it was Aaron Glenn, man. Aaron Glenn, who I just talked about. I mean, he taught you how to be a pro too. And the other corner at that time was a guy named Marcus Coleman, and they were buddies. And, Marcus just took care of me. Like, there's different ways. Everybody's a pro, but guys are making different levels of money. And you can't do everything everybody else does because you just can't. You can't afford it. And don't try. I've seen guys go broke trying. But Marcus and Aaron, the two starting corners, they were really good buddies. But they really looked after me and took care of me. And I don't think I make it through those years in Houston without them around. They were really good guys. And in New York, man, I was just lucky, man. You got Strahan, you got Osi, Antonio Pierce, and Carlos Edmonds. Like, those are my guys, man. They all brought something to the table that made me a better man, and they are lifelong friends. So it was just, I would always say this, and I joke about it, but it's true, is I have this ability to be a great follower. Like, I know who to follow.
Yeah.
I'm a leader in my own right. I lead myself, but I know who to follow and listen to the words that they're saying and their advice. And thank goodness for these men that gave me the advice I needed. But yeah, I was just so lucky to play with those guys.
That's so lovely to hear. Is there a moment in your career that you look back and think, you know what, that is the defining moment of my life?
In my career, defining moment of my life. Oh, you're asking some good questions. I like this. This is. I would be, if I was interviewing somebody, I'd be asking these kind of questions. So I like how you're rolling. Okay, let's just start there. Yeah, it would be the last game I played in, and I've kind of said this story before, but I'll say it again. I said it on a podcast, I think, for the first time, and the last game I played in, I had to move from corner to – I was playing safety all year, and I was going back and forth playing corner and safety and doing it in the same game. Anybody who's done it or understands that is difficult to do. It's two different mindsets. And for the playoffs, they wanted me to play corner, and we were playing against Philly. And as soon as the game starts, the quarterback, who is Jeff Garcia, looks at me and goes, oh my – like, he goes, 33 is at corner. Like, we're going to attack him. And they attacked me. And our corners, Sam Madison, R.W. McQuarters, literally in the huddle, they looked at me and they go, he's not even looking at me. You are the guy today. Like, they are going to attack you, because they're used to seeing you at safety. And Will Demps was our safety. Me and him were still great friends. I should have mentioned his name with the Giants players too. We're great friends to this day. I said, Will, you got to have my back because I'm the guy. I got the target on my back this game. And I just remember in the game, I got hit in the knee, and I really got banged up. And I could have went out of the game. I had a interception the week before that got us into the playoffs. So I had just come off a great game. And I was just like, man, I'm not doing too well. I didn't really play bad in the beginning, but I wasn't on my A game. Mm. And I just told myself, I was like, man, you got to suck it up, man. Go out there and battle. It was just a split second. But I went out there, battled, ended up having a really good game, ended up playing really well. Just, the beginning, had to get my footing. We lost the game, but, I played pretty solid. Even after the game, the D coordinator came to me and was like, you can play for me anywhere, anytime. and I was like, oh, cool, thanks, But that was the last game I played in.
Yeah.
So I say that was important because as I go off in my life and I face different challenges and I'm nervous the same way I'm nervous before a big game and all of these challenges, I always tell myself, like, you are not a quitter. And you're not, because when you've been in those situations where you have contemplated it, you haven't. And if I would have done that, I don't know if I would have been able to do the things I've done post NFL, because in my mind, I would think of myself differently than I do.
Wow. And when you think of all the games you've played and the players you've been up against, who do you think has been the toughest opponent that you've ever faced?
Oh my gosh, Peyton Manning. Peyton Manning, and all his receivers, Marvin Harrison, Reggie Wayne. I was in that conference for 5 years, and those guys, playing against them, going to play the Colts, man. It was the stuff he used to do. It was unreal. As a corner, you could cover a guy. First of all, it's impossible to cover Marvin Harrison and Reggie Wayne all the time. They were great. But even if you got lucky and you were in a good position, the way Peyton Manning could manipulate the throws, you're covering this way, I'm going to throw it to the low hip, to the high hip, up, down, whatever. The things you see Tom Brady do. But and Peyton Manning was magnificent at the line of scrimmage, calling out plays. He knew what you were doing. It was watching the best do the best all the time. You were in the game and you had to try not to be a fan, because it was amazing. It was the one time I lucked up. I remember I accidentally, they usually didn't motion a lot, but I accidentally ended up in the slot playing against Brandon Stokely, who was a receiver. And I hadn't covered him. And he just shook me off the line. He was wide open, running down the middle. And I see Peyton Manning, and I'm like, he's going to throw a touchdown. This is all bad. This is terrible. And I forget who sacked him. Somebody hit him. One of my players sacked him. He fell. And my heart was beating so bad. And Brandon Stokely looked back at me and just shook his head and pointed his finger like, you are lucky. And I was like, yes, I am. Yes, I am, sir. I am very lucky. I just remember looking at Peyton Manning and him looking at me. Oh, man. So that's the only way to beat him, put him on the ground. So, yeah, those are I'd never want to play against him in anything.
All right, guys, we'll be right back. First, we've got a quick message from our friends over at the National Vintage League.
Hi, this is Hugh, and you're listening to the National Vintage League ASMR. If you're looking for authentic vintage NFL jerseys and apparel from the 1970s till now, there's only one place to go. Come check us out at nationalvintageleague.com or check out our Instagram. Save the planet. Look good doing it.
And don't forget, you can enjoy 10% off by using the code NFLGirlUK. Back to the interview. Let's talk about how it was mentally for you when you retired, because I'd imagine it's a massive lifestyle change going from playing a game to moving into private wealth management. How did you handle that change?
Yeah, I knew what I wanted to do, so I was lucky that I understood what my transition would be. So knew I was going to go into private wealth. Probably, when my career started, I knew I was going to do some kind of finance. But it's still hard. That first year, I talk about Carlos Edmonds, who I mentioned earlier. He retired at the same time after 13 years, and he had a back injury too. So we were both complaining about our backs and, pretty much out of the game. And we talked on the phone every day for hours. And we didn't know at that time, we were really mourning. We were, I don't know if it was depression, but it was something like that. But luckily I had him to talk to. A lot of times, you start the NFL and you got these rookies you come in with and people your age group, and you got this group of people, you're all going through it together, but you don't plan to retire with a group of friends. Yeah. It doesn't happen like that. So this is something you go out all alone. And luckily I had Carlos because, nobody understood, no matter what, they didn't understand exactly what was happening internally. So it's very difficult. That first year is really hard. The NFL has done a tremendous job recently with having a lot of programs to help guys through that transition period, because it can be very lonely, confusing, and dark if you don't have the support, because you're walking away. It's like a death you're mourning. It's a part of you is you'll never do it again. Yeah. So you just have to get through that period, and people around you have to understand it might be a tough year or however else long it takes, but with the right support, you'll get through it. And like everything else, people in all walks of life have to deal with loss, and that's what it is. It's loss. Yeah,
definitely. And what prompted, I guess, the move to being like an NFL pundit, and what's it like to work alongside Osi and Mark Chapman as well?
So it was purely accidental getting into the media. It was someone saw me, saw that I was in London and said, "Hey, this guy's out here. We should reach out to him." And when the NFL contacted me, because I knew they were here, I'd been going to games because some of the guys I work with were playing in the games. But I was someone reached out to me from the NFL and said, actually it was David Tossell, who's been there forever, and the NFL UK office, and said, "Hey, Osi's, coming out here and working, and we're thinking about doing this television show. I'd like to talk to you about it." And I'm thinking, Osi? I didn't even know Osi had retired. To me, he was still in Atlanta, but he had just chosen to retire that year and had just come to London. I was like, whoa. I was like, whatever, if Osi's in, I'm in. So I'm like, Osi, when'd you move here? And he's like, oh man, I just decided, and I was coming here and going to be a part of the UK office and stuff. And I'm like, oh, this is great, So that's really what it was. It was like, yo, my friend's doing this, so I'm cool, And that's back to your earlier question. When you're playing, even though I'm really close with those guys, they're still playing.
Yeah.
And I'd see Osi in New York, but when he went to Atlanta, I wasn't at his games like I'd go to New York games. And you don't really start hanging out with those friends again until they retire.
Yeah.
And it's weird like that. But anyway, so he just retired and they said, let's try it. We're going to do this. And then I knew with him, the trust I had with him and the friendship that we could do anything. And then as far as Mark is concerned, I think we just hit the lotto. I look at it now and I understand the business and the skill sets you need to have to be good at what Mark does.
Yeah.
But I learned all those from watching him. He's taught us a lot. He's helped us a lot. He's listened a lot. And he's just such a pro at what he does, and he makes it look so easy.
He does.
But he's willing to share all the information with you. He's all about everyone being successful, doing well, being prepared. He truly is great at what he does. And once again, this is what all I saw. So I didn't know anything else because I was lucky enough to work with Mark. Osi and I were lucky enough to work with him. Now we're all just really good friends. Straight up. He's our buddy, man. I love Mark. So yeah, it's everything you see is true. We get along. We like each other's perspective and opinion, and we like talking to each other. So that's what we're supposed to do. So it works out.
Yeah, the chemistry that the three of you have, I don't think any other show can compete. And as a viewer, I can just see how much fun you're all having. And you feel part of that conversation like you're in the room. Now that's impressive. That is not easy to achieve. And yeah, Mark is incredible. I loved him in the Rugby League show and I love him in this. So yeah, he's brilliant.
Yeah, he's been a an NFL fan since he was a kid. So big time Bears fans, we're always on him about that. But yeah, I mean, when you just understand all sports the way he does, he just brings something special to our conversations and how we can really dive into topics and discuss things because, him and Osi especially, they have a really wide understanding of sports in general. I do also, but I've had to catch up on some sports, but those two guys are just on top of everything.
And I guess in the time that you've been here in the UK, how have you seen the fan base here develop?
So, I look at things like, with guerrilla marketing or grassroots kind of development. So, and I call that the streets, man. When I'm walking the streets, I love public transportation. So I'm on the bus, the tube, all that kind of stuff, walking. And the first couple years, I could see people, recognizing and talking to you. I was like, oh man, there's some fans, this is growing. And now it's just great, right? So I look at that from my personal standpoint. I'm like, wow, the fan base is really growing. And then the games, I mean, it's something special. It's, as I try to tell anybody willing to listen, like this is different. Like players come and that haven't played in the UK and they are blown away. It's just different. The atmosphere, the intensity is a playoff game. It is a playoff game. It is not a regular season game atmosphere. And players feed off of that. We love that. So I think the fan base has grown. The fan is so knowledgeable and such a unique fan because you have fans that love every different team at a game with two teams that might not be their favorite team, but they're a fan. And that's cool. Like that doesn't exist.
No, exactly.
And that's what makes it so special. That's why I'm so happy to be a part of this and wouldn't want to be anywhere else because this is its own thing. And the fans did it. It is all them, no matter what. The fans have made this a successful experience for everyone involved.
So I'm a late bloomer for when it came to watching the NFL. I started to watch in 2012 and I came to my first live game in 2014 and now I'm a fully fledged season ticket holder. But even I've seen a huge change during my time as a fan and just how the game's grown. And I'm just so grateful the fact that we are, we're lucky to have these games in the first place. Now, obviously, it's a shame we don't have the games this year, but, we can't do anything about that.
No, we can't. And, what it will do is when they come back, people will be fired up. The intensity will be real. It will be exact. It will be, you put a 2X or a 10X on it because it'll be explosive. Because it already was.
Yeah, exactly.
So, I'm just, that's what gives me comfort in understanding that when those games come back, we thought we had something special before. I can only imagine the hunger that will be there for these games when the NFL's back in town.
Definitely. And when you look back at London games that you've been to, is there anyone, like any particular game that kind of stands out as being your favourite?
My first one, I will say when the Giants were here, and I called that game for the BBC and it was at Twickenham. It was just the Giants being there. That was surreal for me because the Giants were playing, it was special. That was different. But last year, the first game at Tottenham, man, just seeing that stadium.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
It's a very cool stadium.
I was like, what have I just witnessed? I mean, and then, I love, and then I was really excited, Jacksonville was having two games, out here. And it's just, when they're at Wembley, it's like their home stadium, I mean, it's just cracking for them guys. So it's It's hard to say. I know you asked me for one, but every one of those, I'm just so excited, man. It's like I take so much pride and ownership in everything that happens out here with the NFL experience. So I'm just all in.
Oh, no, I think that's really cool. Now, obviously, we're in a really weird time at the moment. We don't know what's happening with the new season. And it seems even like the players, they don't necessarily seem to have the full story either. And they're obviously being quite, public about it on social. What have your thoughts been on the situation?
So my thoughts are, when you just look at it, you peel everything away. We're always talking about management and labor in the conversations that they're having. And this happens throughout all walks of life, right? Management and labor are constantly trying to get on the same page.
Yeah.
And so in this, we have these, these circumstances, and everyone's trying to do their best, and everyone's trying to do their best and protect themselves. So I always think this, just being a part of the NFL on the player side, is, we always want what's best for us as players, and we're always going to stand up and fight for it. But there's always an agreement at the end. And that's what I think's happening now. You're trying to process, the players have said and publicly went out there and said, hey, we want to play, but these are the things we're concerned about. So now the main thing is that people in the media don't take that like they have in the past and say the players are acting like they don't want to play. The players want to play. They just want to be safe. So, and the NFL wants the players to be safe also. So I have faith, man, with other leagues playing right now and finding a way. The NFL will find a way to get it done, make sure the players are as safe as possible, and the whole the organization as a whole is safe as possible. So, this is a very complex, and you have the NFL medical people who I know some are highly capable individuals working to figure out the best way to approach this, and the flexibility, which is the key to change course and do things that are necessary to continue to protect players.
Now, we've seen some big paydays happen over the off-season. I've always been curious, how does it affect the players at the fringes of the team or on the lower end of the NFL pay scale when they see a player get a big payout, especially as they're, a salary cap to contend with?
So players are excited. I've never been anywhere where a player isn't happy when one of your peers gets paid. You know who deserves it. Who's going to do it, and they should get it. So I made a joke with Osi, I was really excited when he got paid because we were about to have a good night out. Let's go, it's party time. So no, you're excited. You want to see those guys get paid. The one thing I will say is if you were a guy lined up to get for a payday and somebody else gets paid, and you understand the salary cap ramifications, well, at that point, they're not going to pay me what I want because the money's not there. So I'm not going to be here. It's not that they don't want me. It's that they can't afford me. So if I was in that situation, that would be tough because you would know who they chose. But overall, you're happy when guys get paid. I will say this: it does change the dynamics of a team sometime when there's only so many guys that can get paid. So if you're a middle of the pack kind of guy like me, that's when you might get replaced by a younger, cheaper guy because they got to free up that money from somewhere. So those are things you can start thinking of. As a player, to be honest, the only thing I used to think of every year was if they drafted a player in my position in the first round, because you knew somebody wasn't going to be in that room next year because that first rounder is going to be there. So that was a big concern. When they drafted a player in the first round, you're like, one of us is getting cut.
Yeah.
So that was tough.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah, you knew your address was going to change really fast.
Actually, that is something I've always wondered. Now, it's not easy moving house at any point, so how did it feel when you had to then move from city to city? I feel that must be, disruptive, right?
Yeah, it's easy for a guy like me, even though I was in Houston for a long time, I knew I was like, it was year to year, so I was prepared like that. I lived my life like that. But it'd be harder if you sign somewhere as a big free agent or get drafted and you think you're going to settle down, and then next year it's a whole different thing. I made that mistake in Dallas thinking I was going to be there forever, and it didn't happen. It did not happen. So I learned early on that this is you better be flexible and mobile because you could be anywhere. So just be ready. And that's how it is.
Well, Jason, it's been so lovely to chat with you today. It's been really fascinating to hear about your experiences. And thank you so much for sharing your amazing stories with me.
I appreciate you having me and Osi on here. And keep up the good work and asking really cool questions, because that's what it's all about.
Well, that's it for another episode of the Cleats Off Podcast. As always, I'd love your comments and feedback, so feel free to reach out to me at NFL Girl UK across Twitter, Facebook or Instagram. And finally, don't forget to subscribe to the podcast. I wouldn't want you to miss a single episode. Until next time, thanks for listening.